All right. Just a moment before we start. Let me hit one more of these just to make sure it's working. Okay, good. All right. So, it's time to learn more about Monster Hunter Frontier. Also, you can see it just over my shoulder here. Why is Evangelion Unit 1 in this? Why is Evangelion Unit 1 here? Let's find out.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode on the
Hello.
history of the Monster Hunter Frontier series. Well, we're finally about halfway through the series of videos, and it's only going to get crazier from this point onward. If you thought Supremacy was starting to push the limits of how difficult or eccentric monsters could get, you may be happy or disappointed to know we're not even close to the top tier monsters yet. On top
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what's been shown so far has been pretty cool. So, but this does seem to be where we get into Frontier shenanigans. So, buckle up.
of that, some of this content might start to look a bit more familiar to players that ever experienced Frontier. Something I've noticed through my research and discussing it with various players is that G was generally the earliest a lot of Western players got into the series through whatever means they used to access the servers from the West. This is also the point in the series that Frontier began to expand platforms.
That is a huge Gravios. I don't think I've seen a single gold crown that big. That is huge Gravios.
No longer limited to just PC and the 360, Frontier would begin to spread to the PlayStation 3, Wii U, and PlayStation Vita. But
it was on the Vita? I never had a Vita, but I did have a PSP. I missed that. I've mentioned before. Oh. But I had no idea it was ported to consoles eventually.
We'll explore that more when we get to each port's release. I don't have a super long introduction for this video, so we'll be able to get right into the content, including new features, weapons, and monsters. If you haven't watched my previous
is this when the Tomfta and Magnet Spike thing show up?
videos on the history of the series, I suggest you do so now. Additionally, if you enjoy these videos and want to help support the channel, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It just takes a couple of...
Well, as per the last, you do get the like. And at this point, I am probably going to subscribe, but we'll save that until the end of the playlist, just cause. And for those of you watching, the link to his playlist of the Monster Hunter Frontier history is in this description. Word not wording is in the description of this video. So after this, go check it out.
Seconds and really helps boost the reach of the video to Monster Hunter fans everywhere. I'm SuperRAD, and today I'm here to bring you a brief history of Monster Hunter Frontier G.
All right. Also, given that this is Frontier G, is this when they bring in G rank? And I'm going to, again, be showing my back in my day with this, but something about having Master rank being called G rank made it feel more special to me.
In my previous video, we talked a lot about the features and monsters included in Forward, but one big feature I didn't mention was the inclusion of Hulks, which were companion flying wyverns introduced in Forward 2. I'd like to take a little bit of time now to go over them since I missed them previously. They were
Okay, that's really cool.
customizable companions similar to Palicos. Players could equip skills to them in order to produce various types of effects, such as their Hulk being able to shoot various elemental projectiles, or even giving the ability to heal or buff hunters. Their element
That is really cool.
was dictated based on what hunters fed them, and this could be changed recurrently. The element they set would change the appearance of the Hulk, and each element had 3 different levels which would also adjust the appearance. An update within Forward 4 allowed Hulks to act similarly to a Farcaster and transport hunters to any area within the map. However,
Okay, so this is just better Wing Drake. This is better Wing Drakes before Wing Drakes.
Trade-off was that this traversal method would land you in a random location.
Yeah. Ooh, this guy. You guys have mentioned him to me before. And for a end thing Elder Dragon, he seems pretty cool.
Frontier G
Like, it's not crazy Frontier shenanigans from the one hunt I looked at someone do to him.
was announced as a massive update or expansion for Monster Hunter Frontier Online and would start things off with 10 brand new monsters as well as upgrades for various other monsters thanks to the inclusion of G rank finally being implemented. This meant there would be new G rank weapons and armor sets as well as the introduction of new elements and actions for various weapon types currently included within.
What do you mean new elements?
In the game. Its initial release was April 17th, 2013. Now, while the game announced 10 new monsters for G1, a few of these had to be pushed back due to development issues. Thanks to this, there was actually only 5 brand new monsters released in G1, and we wouldn't see more until G2. Along with these new monster inclusions came 3 new areas to fight in, explore, or both. We'll be going over all of them as we discuss the new monsters inclusions. Similar
and I'll be honest, the monsters is the main thing I'm interested in. Because, that is the main draw of Monster Hunter.
Yeah. To Ludroth and Royal Ludroth introduced in Monster Hunter.
Hey, Sponge Boys!
Frontier introduced a new small and large Leviathan pairing with the inclusion of Pokhara and Pokhara Dawn. Both were walrus like creatures, with the Pokhara having slight visual differences between male and female. Much like hardcore Blue Yan Cuckoo, it was able to also make pitfall traps for hunters to fall into, and also attacked using concussive claps. These
I said on the last video I did on this playlist that the pitfall for Yan Cuckoo is a really cool mechanic, so it's neat to see that come back into another monster. And also, a Steel Leviathan is just a really cool design choice. Seems to fit that quirky mid-strength monster niche.
Monsters could be found in the new hunting area known as Polar Sea, which mostly consisted of icy cliffsides and glaciers, as well as flat floating ice that the player can traverse. Players can actually find a frozen Lao Shan Lung in one of the glaciers found within Area 4 on this.
A frozen Lao Shan Lung. Shit. That is some awesome set piece design. I hope we get to see that a little later in the video, because that sounds really cool. Like also probably inspired the one region from Rise. What's the name? Not Hinterlands. Hinterlands is World. Ice Shard Cliffs is Wilds. Rhine something, I think. But the ice map from Rise, there's a frozen Zora Magnaros in it. Maybe they drew from this. Seems like they've drawn. Oh, oops! Accidentally jumped forward.
Founded the new hunting.
But yeah, it seems the more I've watched these, the more I've realized Frontier seems to be like the draft folder that they've come back to a lot. If that makes sense.
Area known as Polar Sea, which mostly consisted of icy cliffsides and glaciers, as well as flat floating ice that the player can traverse. Players can actually find a frozen Lao Shan Lung in one of the glaciers found within Area 4 on this map.
I wonder if you can mine like a chunk of the Lao Shan Lung to get some generic dragon parts, because there was that one spot on the tower where you could do that, and then there's the frozen, like the shed Kushala Deora shell in the Snowy Mountains that you could do that with, so be cool if you could do that there too.
NOOOO is a stylish bird wyvern that takes design influence from both map. NOOOO is a stylish bird wyvern that takes design influence from both Gypsyros and Hypnocatrice. It
looks more Hypnocatrice than Gypsyros, but go on.
Its funky little afro to store static electricity and will dance around and discharge this periodically.
I really like this. Hold on, I like this one.
This monster tends to be found within the Great Forest and desert locations. Meadogarin is a fanged beast that happens to be an odd mutation of a lone Camu or a Garen. It has
so it's a variant or a deviant then.
gain the ability to manipulate fire, and it can move so fast that it'll disappear for a moment, and hunters will have to listen for an audio cue to know when to dodge.
That's cool, but this does not seem to be the kind of monster you'd give that to, right? This guy isn't screaming, "I am that fast" to me, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I'd assume that this is a faster monster, but that's the kind of thing you'd give to something like Valstrax or Malzeno, not Fanged Beast variant, at least to me.
bit more fair than the instant transmission hardcore Kirin. Hugikiki is a flying
Or
wyvern that
Kirin,
resides in the highlands. Like Nargacuga,
Let me get a better look at you. Okay, I like your head and you using the Tigrex pseudo-wyvern frame. You got a lot of spikiness going on.
highlands. Like Nargacuga, it mainly attacks by throwing out spines to stick into the ground, but its
Okay.
movement is more based off of Barioth from Monster Hunter Tri. In fact, you'll probably notice that a lot of monsters introduced at this point used 3rd gen rigs.
Yeah. If he does do a bunch of spike throwing stuff and he moves like Barrow, it almost, I feel like this central spine is a little long to my taste, but I could see him working in
The
newer
thing
shit.
that Hyuji has is in its final phase, where upon taking enough damage, a storm would begin in the highlands and Hyuji would summon a whirlwind around its tail. From
Okay, but is he causing the storm, or is this just a coincidental timing thing?
here, it gains the ability to imbue its spikes with not only paralysis, but sleep and poison at the same time.
And we're in frontier shenanigans. You shouldn't have more than 2 status effects per, like, body part. Like, I could see having poison and paralysis or poison and sleep. But why would you have all three at once? Actually, how does having all three at once even work? Because wouldn't you fall to sleep and then immediately get jolted into paralysis and you wouldn't be asleep anymore?
And it was entirely possible to juggle those effects on unsuspecting hunters. You could be paralyzed while poisoned, then a follow-up attack would render you sound asleep. Truly,
Oh, okay. It probably should have let that continue. So it's essentially it can do one of these 3 things. That makes way more sense.
a very dangerous addition. Now for the flagship monster, Shantian, which functioned as your G-rank entry point and had to be defeated in order to access G-rank content. It's an
Ah! So he's not quite as an in-game Elder Dragon as I assumed him to be. Alright. Still. I mean, we'll see if he actually goes crazy. The one fight I saw of him, he didn't really do too much.
Elder Dragon and fought in a special new airship location known as the Large Exploration Ship. This area functions as your typical arena battleground for fighting Elder Dragons and contains multiple tools like Ballista and Hunting Gong. Shantian's movement resembles that of 3rd.
I wonder what the Hunting Gong does. Just realized I had something going on in the background of my room. I need to turn that off. Make sure it's not gonna mess with anything else. My bad. Alright.
Gen Leviathans and is a shortened quest for the G-break or G entry point. Shantian will start on the floor of the exploration ship and use a plethora of thunder attacks.
Yeah. It is really cool that you fight it on an airship, though. And that alone does kind of make me want to see it come back or something like that. I mean, unfortunately, I was never able to play the city version of Try Go to Lochlac, so I never got to do the Jin and Din Moran whale hunts, which is a bummer because the recordings of those I've seen did look really fun. And the fact that you are on the sand ship chasing after the monster is really cool. So doing that on an airship is arguably even cooler because airship.
Taking enough damage, it begins to float, where it acts much like an underwater Legaia.
It also and this might be a bit niche, but it also reminds me of a 3D anime I saw on Netflix a long time ago at this point, a couple of years, might have even been before World was released, actually. It was like, it was probably a little bit after Worlds, but it was called Drifting Dragons, and it was like almost like a whaling story, but on an airship like this, hunting all sorts of crazy dragons, and then Dungeon Meshi style cooking them in different creative ways. And I enjoyed it. And this made me think of it. Let me back up.
G break or G entry point. Shantian will start on the floor of the exploration ship and use a plethora of thunder attacks. Upon taking enough damage, it begins to float, where it acts much like an underwater Legaia cruise using the same thunder elements. Deal enough damage from here and the clouds will darken.
Actually, hold on. When this guy came out, it was right after Try. Does he predate Amatsu? Because Amatsu's 4th gen. I was comparing him to Amatsu, but it might actually be the other way around, and Amatsu Muji Amatsu based on Shantian. If there's someone watching who knows the dates a little bit better than me, because I suck at remembering actual dates, please tell me if Shantian actually came out before Amatsu, because even more evidence of Frontier being the drafts folder, you know?
Will strike and Shantian will fly around a great distance from the ship. Players must then utilize the ship's ballista binder to bring it crashing back down. However, this fight will end in a repel and be revisited later on in G2 for the full experience. Once repelled, players will finally have successfully entered G rank. One final note on Shantian is that it introduced the Tensho element, which was one of many new combination elements that would consist of 2 or 3 at varying degrees of effectiveness.
Okay, so this is where the anime shenanigans mixing elements to create sub-elements I've heard about comes from. Yeah, I don't know. That is something... I mean, we'll see how it actually plays out if he goes... excuse me, if he goes over it more. But that feels a little too not Monster Hunter to me, you know? Because it's one thing if you have, say, a dual blade set that has fire and ice or whatever, then it's crafted from different monster parts, and one blade will do ice and the other fire. Or one of my favorite dual blade sets from Freedom Unite, the Gimpendrome Iodrome one, where it was ice and poison. Or maybe even a weapon that has both blast and fire, I could see making somewhat sense, but... Or something like an insect glaive, where you have your insect having one element and your weapon having another. All of that kind of makes sense, but having a single weapon, like a single hit weapon, having multiple elements stacked together, and that feels more magic than monster parts. And I know it's not realistic to slap a Rathalos wing into a sword and it does fire too, but it feels more real than, okay, because I took these parts together, it can now do 38% fire, 12% ice, and 4% lightning to become whatever. So I don't know how I feel about this.
For example, Tensho consisted of fire, water, and thunder elements, but dealt more with water than the other two.
And see, that's another there too. I can maybe see it if it was like slush, that's a mixture of water and ice. That makes sense. But or a storm, ice, water, something like that. But throwing in fire into that too, even if we were to go full, this is magic, just straight up, we're ignoring the suspension of disbelief, that the level of disbelief suspension that Monster Hunter normally has. Why would you combine water and fire together? Because, and especially if water is the dominant one, that feels like at most you'd get hot, like boiling water. Well, actually, I say that, and now I'm thinking about it. Boiling water or steam plus lightning, that actually sounds more like storm than not. So there might actually be a logic here.
Elemental combinations were introduced in later updates, but the light element, which consisted of thunder and fire, actually
Get thunder and fire making light. Well, again, more into the magic than Monster Hunter issue I have with some of Frontier. That combination makes sense to me a lot more than the last one did.
showed up in G1 through premium event weapons and a Fate Stay Night collaboration.
And it's from the Fate Stay collaboration, which makes a lot of sense. Though that said, I hope they show what the Fate Stay collaboration actually entailed, because is it just unique armor set, or... Because actually having an EMEA set and bow, that would actually be pretty cool. An Archer EMEA. I've seen a couple of the Fate Stay Night series. I've not played any of the games or anything, but I have the surface level knowledge and then some of the deeper lore of Fate, but I know the Fate series gets really weird, like even weirder than Elder Scrolls deep lore. This is a tangent. Let's cut it off.
One update saw an initial surge in sales and players for Frontier, but ultimately this began to get worse and worse, with a 20 to 30% drop in player base, and the development team feeling a sense of crisis during this time. Despite this, updates would continue, and as a lot of us know, the game would survive all the way to 2019. On May 20,
it made it all the way to... I thought Frontier ended way sooner than that. Hang on. It was lasting until after World came out? I thought it only existed in like... I thought it ended in like maybe 2011 or somewhere around. They made it till almost 2020? Okay. I thought it had shut down by then.
Second, Frontier received a G1 Refine update which fixed several bugs within the game and continued the inclusion of the
Always
Hunter
nice.
Festival and the inclusion of G-Rank Secret Armor, which I described in the previous video, so go check it out over there. Seriously, I can't stress enough how buggy this game was for a little while there. The developers really weren't expecting such a surge in players with the release of G, and it unfortunately showed. Now, with all that out of the way, let's check out the new inclusions in Monster Hunter Frontier G2.
Alright.
G2 released July 10th, 2013, introducing the 5 remaining monsters that were supposed to be released for G1, as well as 2 other monsters planned for a G4 release but that had released early. A new Conquest War mechanic was introduced, which we'll get into, and this was also the point we started seeing announcements and releases of Frontier on additional consoles. Conquest War was a new weekly event introduced to the series, which consisted of 2-week phases. This was necessary to fight the full versions of Shantian, the newly introduced Disu Fiora, G-Rank Fatalis, who was released in G3.1, and G-Rank Crimson Fatalis, who was released later. The second week was the rewards phase, where players could collect various rewards based on how they performed in the war. Similar to Guild Quests and Monster Hunter 4, killing Conquest monsters would raise their level. Slaying a monster without carding raises its level by 5, while carding will lower this level gain by 2 per feint. Luckily, you fainting would not affect the progress of others. Level
This actually sounds like a pretty good collaborative thing. Some of the previous ones he's covered feel a little iffy to me, but this one so far seems pretty cool, actually.
reset at the start of the event and have a cap all the way up to 9,999, which may seem excessive, but was doable. Leveling
Okay.
a hunt raises the monster's attack and defense by a multiplier. Certain level thresholds would even change their mechanics. For example, G-Rank Fatalis would gain Dark Revival, which would allow it to pull a Phantom or Supremacy Deru move and revive in Rage mode while being even more powerful.
First, that makes sense for Fatalis, but also I have a lot less of a objection to arbitrary power buffs from something like this, because this is clearly like a game thing. It's like this. It's like the same kind of vibe as some of the goofy event quests that are not real to the events of the story, if that makes sense. Probably not articulating that great. Anyway, let's go on.
Leveling could be done faster by participating in special story quests per event monster. Getting to a certain point within these quests unlock the songstress, and players
Also, feel free to say hi at any point or spam any of those things you see above my head at me. They should be working. If not, I might have to toggle the settings again. They were being buggy last time I tried this, but
could raise her friendship level in order to boost how many levels they received. This conquest event allowed players to fully hunt and slay Shantian, and during the fight, there would be a transition in which the exploration ship crashes into a volcanic area. Think of it like fighting Gen Moran, which transitions to a final confrontation midway through the fight. Now, Shantian wasn't the only enemy that received this treatment. The dragon Disu Fiora was introduced. This white and red elder dragon bore a resemblance to Alatreon in stature and movement, but
you're using that. I had a whole conversation about this, I think, either the first or second video, but yeah, I much prefer. I know Alatreon is the Capcom official, but I much prefer Alatreon. Same with Tigrex over Tigrex, Lagiacrus over Lagiacrus, so on.
With a level of power and insanity that was starting to be expected from Frontier, it utilized the combo element Frozen Seraphim, which combined fire, ice, and dragon.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Fire and dragon, that makes sense. Like, it's energy into fire, sure. What? Ice into fire, that I can kind of get the logic of the first combo one he covered of fire, water, and lightning into kind of a storm element, because boiling water, steam mixing with that kind of makes sense if I think about it hard enough. But why would you put fire and ice together as like a fusion element? It makes sense if you're having them as like a dual blade, one does one, one does the other, opposing elements, sure. But fusing them into one element, even if we are going to, this don't feel Monster Hunter anymore, pushing that aside, why would you put, even, like, if we're going full, this is combo magic, the only time that's ever made even a little sense is with Ultimate Big Chill's fire so cold it burns thing. And I don't think that that's what they're going for here.
Massive meteor storms, combined ice and fire
Also, hello, Logan. Well-timed error.
blasts, a second phase that allowed it to cause huge ice explosions from the ground, summon massive tornadoes of ice and fire, and a massive attack that would one-shot hunters unless they stood behind the shield that Disu constructed for itself. Very similar to some of the mechanics we now see in World.
So, again, Frontier is just the drafts folder.
Monster could be fought at the new World's End Arena location. Moving away from the craziness that was Disu, regular
Why Evangelion Unit 1? Why is Ava 01 over here?
Monsters
and also tiny.
Produced also included Anoru Patisu.
Ooh. This is the other shark wyvern that I've seen pictures of, and I do not like his design. Something about it just does not jive with me.
Flying wyvern modeled off of a saw-nosed shark. This aggressive flying wyvern ruled the polar sea and had the ability to tunnel in and out of the thick ice, whilst using the ice element with deadly effectiveness. Despite sharing a lot of movement with the...
Also, snowman status effect. I've said this before on pretty much all of these, but I want Snowman and Mudman and their other versions to come back because it was so fun. Ridiculous, but also so stressful sometimes. Like, you got a Tigrex full tilt charging at you while you're stuck in a ball and you can barely get out of the way. And if you manage to get out of the way and then break free, it is such a huge relief. But if it gets you, you just kind of have to laugh about it because, of course, you died because you were snowman.
3rd gen Diablos rig, it was a surprisingly adept flyer, and had an interesting feature once you massively reduced its health, where it would begin to use the dragon element and would create tornadoes with combinations of the two elements. Gyarugu was also introduced. It was a relative of a Biorugu, but utilizes the ice element rather than the fire element. It could form massive structures.
I like this color scheme for the design a lot more than the previous one. This feels a lot better to me. I don't know what it is about it.
Of ice for the sole purpose of shattering it to strike hunters, and also had the ability to roll, much like Uragan. Next up we have
Ossify, yeah. I'm like I don't know if I've said this before, but I never got to play any of the 4th gens, but I've seen a couple of the cephalopod, cuttlefish. Why am I forgetting the name? You got the name for me? I think it's classified as an elder dragon with a giant dragon laser. Steals all the bones. Mimicry. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and that did seem really fun. Just cannot remember the name for the life of me all of a sudden. I think it's an in something. Oh well.
Rabidiora, who is a subspecies of Rucodiora, and could use the new Thunderpole element, which combined thunder and magnetism together.
That one makes perfect sense. Thunder and that's literally just electromagnetism. That makes perfect sense. That's normal, right? That's a perfect idea for a subspecies of the magnet dragon. So I'm down with that.
Diora was slower than Rucodiora.
Nakarkalos. Nakarkalo, thank you. I knew it was an in something. I was just slipping my brain.
However, hit much harder and featured roaming thunderballs that would explode at inopportune times. Continuing the magnetism trend, another duo monster pair were introduced known as Ray and Lo.
Okay, I know he said dual monster, but I heard dual monster. And now I'm wondering if there was ever a Yu-Gi-Oh collab.
Gogarth. These monsters shared a stance with Rajang and had the ability to perform tag team attacks using mild amounts of magnetism. One interesting thing to note is that these two could damage each other significantly during their individual attacks, and if one was to be stunned, the knockout stars would persist even after they woke up. In this state, they would often target their mate. Additionally, these monsters were originally planned for G4, which was still 2 updates away, but were pushed forward for an earlier release. These monsters...
That sounds really cool. Okay. I think I actually want these guys to come back a lot. That sounds like a really fun hunt.
Were also the first to reintroduce hardcore into the G updates, each coming with a hardcore version that dealt additional damage and would allow them to puff up their fur larger when enraged. Finally, we have Miru, who was accessed through a rare quest, a counterpart to the unknown flying wyvern we met in the last video. Miru was a shape-shifting fox pseudo-wyvern that would jump through different states as it took damage. It uses...
What do you mean it's shape-shifting?
Attacks from Tigrex, Nargacuga, and Diura.
I like its design a lot better than Unknown, but what do you mean it shapeshifts?
And has the ability to use the Crystal Blight we had only seen on the Akura family up until now, as well as the...
Mentioning the 2 scorpions, I think they're also really cool ones that could come back.
Fire element. These states it could shift into would cause various visual differences. The different modes consisted of its base form where it didn't use any elements, a crystal form where it was whiter and used crystal attacks, a fire form where it had blue curved horns, a speed form where it was similar to Nargacuga, and a power form where red markings would cover it. As it neared death, it was able to...
Okay. Now we're getting into some shenanigans. I see what you mean by shape-shifting. But it kind of works. I'd need like some kind of ecology video explaining the how, or Hunter's Note blurb explaining the how. But I can see this kind of makes sense.
Eventually combine these forms into a huge red, white, and dangerous all over form. Sarah Symmetry pointed out to me that the fight theme for this monster is absolutely amazing. In August, the PS3 and Wii U ports of Frontier were announced, with the PS3 version being released on November 20th, 2013, and the Wii U version being released on December 11th. In September, the Vita was also announced to start Frontier service in 2014. These ports all allowed crossplay within the same server, meaning PS3,
Well, that's nice.
Wii U, and Vita players could play alongside PC players. And it's kind of crazy that an
Crossplay's always
essentially
great.
heavily modded Monster Hunter DOS release did this while World never bothered.
Shade. I've seen pictures of this Rathalos. I have no idea how I feel about it.
October 16th, 2013, with a G3.1 update on December 18th and a G3.2 update on...
Woo! The Vampire Leviathan. I've seen some stuff about him. I think he's pretty cool if he's what I think he is.
February 5th, 2014. Not only did this expansion bring several new monsters and a large amount of hardcore species, but it also introduced the new sigil system, hunting partners, and burst species. Certain G-rank weapons would have slots associated with them, but these were different from traditional decoration slots. Instead, they were diamond-shaped and players would slot in special sigils. These sigils had various effects, such as simply raising raw damage a lot. They could raise it a lot. Or even granting new weapon moves, as well as various other effects.
New moves is a little crazy, but this is talismans.
Seriously, this was the closest Frontier players could get to reaching godhood by this point in the series, and could become exceptionally powerful with the help of sigils. Once fused to a weapon, sigils required a special catalyst to remove, which would be obtained through various means.
That's interesting. It gives you consequence for being reckless with it. And if it's a particularly powerful effect, maybe especially if it has a drawback, I kind of like that.
Hunting partners were similar to the Rasta system already implemented, except players had the ability to actually bring their partner on quests with them rather than giving them to other hunters. They could level up through use and would have their own weapon rank and skill set. Some of the skills they could obtain were useful endgame abilities, but unfortunately the weapon choice was limited based on effectiveness. For example, while a sword and shield partner may be fairly effective in battle, having them equip other weapons could tend to be useless and do more harm than good, most likely due to how the AI was programmed. Baru Ragaru was introduced, and this monster presented a hugely adaptable fight, and several quests for it were introduced. Baru was a leech-like leviathan that had the ability to pin hunters and drain their blood. This extended to the native life in the biome it was fought in. Baru was seen with seams on its flank, and when it gorged itself, the seams would split to show the fluids it had consumed.
Yeah, I've heard of this guy before, and I really like him. And I think he is one of the ones that I am fully on board coming back to mainline, because he seems like a very fun hunt, and I love me some Leviathans.
It could drain poison, blood, and paralyzing venom, and the seam would show each fluid the beast had absorbed. For example, it could snare a Gendrome and gain the paralysis ability. Baru could also exhaust its reserve of drained fluid if interrupted enough whilst feeding, at which point it would default to its base element, which was surprisingly water. This monster...
I don't know how that's necessarily surprising, but that is so good. Everything I hear about this guy makes me want him more.
Also had a hardcore variation that was stronger than its normal counterpart. Next up, we have the burst species, which are considered to be powerful relatives of existing monsters that can utilize various elements. The first to be introduced in G3 was KHEZU, a relative of Rathalos who utilized the new light element, a combination of thunder and fire. The unique...
Again, thunder and fire making light makes sense if we're just talking fantasy magic, but this being... Yeah, it doesn't feel Monster Hunter-y, but I just don't like this design, if I'm being honest. It almost makes sense for like a Guardian design, and if they brought him as a, oh, surprise, it was a Guardian this whole time, it almost makes sense, but...
thing about KHEZU here is that it would change itself based on the damage that the hunter was doing, and in turn boost its own attacks in turn. With cutting weapons, KHEZU boosted its legs with massive stomps, faster movement, and a...
Oh, good character. Yes! Exactly. Exactly, Trousers. Baragil has such potential, especially in a modern gen where they could do so many different environmental things with him. And like you said, having him act super cowardly when he's low on juices, but maybe he gets more bold and brash when he's juiced up on, say, paralysis, and he gets more sneaky backstabby when he's on poison or something like that. He would be really cool. And you know what? He would actually make a pretty good guardian, I think. Now, the downside of that is we'd have to have some flavor, like a poison and a paralysis and a couple other new monsters to Bavaria. But I think but I'm not opposed to new monsters, so if they added prerequisites, I think he'd make a cool guardian.
Resistance to cutting damage. With blunt, it boosted its phase spikes and allowed it to gain resistance to blunt damage. With shots, it would mimic its assailant and used more ranged light attacks. In G3...
Also, going back to Glowy Rathalos, the idea that it changes and adapts to the weapons you're using, I really like that. I just don't like his design. Just something about it just doesn't sit right with me.
Point 2, another burst species was introduced known as Muraginasu, who is a relative of the Espina species. As this monster was adapted to the darkness...
Also, why do you gotta pronounce it Espinas? Why, man?
Its gimmick was being completely blind.
So KHEZU and Giganox. Okay, so
This is the darkness element, which combines ice and...
Okay, a darkness element. Again, we're going into this is just magic now.
Dragon, and targets players based
what
on
makes ice
its assailant and used species. As this monster was adapted to the darkness, its gimmick was being completely blind.
Yeah.
It utilizes the darkness element, which combines ice and dragon. And
why does dragon element being part of whatever makes darkness kind of makes sense, because I mean dragon and lightning, especially in older, had the black to the red, but why ice and dragon making shadow dark? That doesn't make. I could see like a red crackling dragon ice thing that could be really cool, but why does that just make shadows? I'd rather it be something like Gore Shagaru, where it has the scales it scatters everywhere to darken your vision. That does not seem like a combination that would result in shadow to me, even if we are going off of the it's just magic now.
Targets players based on who is performing the most damage or who is making the most noise. It will then
and it targeting you based off of who does the most noise is also pretty cool. I'm not sure why they chose Espionage to be the base for this one. I would have done it with something like KHEZU or maybe a Nargacuga version, something like maybe Giganox, but I like a lot of the design thoughts that go into it, even if the element doesn't make sense. And the color scheme is nice too.
Focus on said targets similar to Safi Jiva in Monster Hunter World. While relative to Espinas, the visual differences are striking, with a black and bright yellow color scheme as well as a large drill-like horn. Another interesting mechanic was that this monster's aggro was so intense, hunters were presented with 3 bone piles the moment Muraginasu got mad. These bone piles completely eliminated all damage and knockback for attacks, up to 3 times, and were instrumental in managing the monster's ire. Other hardcore monsters include hardcore Akura Vishimu, who can produce multiple crystals that will explode over time, but also
I like how they gave him more yellowy hair. That looks good on him.
Has the ability to run into them and set them off early. It also has a hip check that's so powerful it will actually knock itself over due to the force. Hardcore Black Gravios.
Hip checks are always infamous, but I do think having the Scorpions back again would be really cool. And apparently hardcore Gravios is why we have an absolute unit of a Gravios.
Who appears as an older version of your typical subspecies. Black Gravios will vent heat far more often than traditionally expected and can emit hot sleep gas from its tail attacks. Hardcore
Do you say hot sleep gas?
Check that's so powerful it will actually knock itself over due to the force. Hardcore Black Gravios, who appears as an older version of your typical subspecies. Black Gravios will vent heat far more often than traditionally expected and can emit hot sleep gas from its tail.
Yeah, he did say hot sleep gas. Is it just sleep gas and he's using hot as an adjective, or does his sleep blast also give you fire blight? Because that sounds really mean if that's the case. Because if his heat puff also does fire blight and you're stuck sleeping while you get in the fire tick, that's gotta suck.
Attacks. Hardcore Cephadrome
Cephadrome
now has a pink Q along the edge of its fins. The main difference with this hardcore monster is how aggressive it is compared to a typical Cephadrome.
I said this before, but you're gonna probably call cap on it, but it's not. I do actually like Cephadrome and Cephalos. I think they're doofy. Something about their face just has derp energy, and I love them.
Top of this, it can now command the Cephalos around it for coordinated attacks. Sounds similar to what we are seeing with Great Izuki in Monster Hunter Rise. And
Izuki. I have never heard anyone pronounce Izuchi as Izuki. Regardless, I do like it when monsters can command their minions. I mean, one of my favorite, actually probably my favorite early on large monster is Great Jaggy. And I love it when monsters can command their base prey versions.
Hardcore Gold Rathian. Other than being stronger, it had a few visual differences like a longer chin and blue eyes. A few new moves included a side tail swing, which is thrown out in a counterclockwise motion, a large forward rush attack, and a charged breath attack. It's finally time to talk about G4, or as it is known at release, G Genuine, and the introduction of a brand new weapon, the Tonfas.
I have heard a lot of stories about the Tonfa. And I almost want them back. I mean, they'd have to tone down frontier shenaniganness of them. But we do need another blunt weapon, I feel. I think we're long overdue another blunt weapon, and either we need to do the one thing I talked about in the last of these, where we make blunt severing dependent on the weapon model and not the weapon type. So where we could have the axe hammers do cutting damage and the club dual swords do bludgeoning, or we need a new bludgeoning because we only have really 2 bludgeoning weapons. Kind of 3 if you want to bonk someone with your shield using SNS, but we don't really have too many options to go bonk with, and I feel that's a shame. And Tomtas are pretty close to just having a fist weapon, too, which was something that I was really enjoying with the Akuma collab, the Street Fighter Akuma crossover collab thing. Honestly, I stayed in the Akuma armor for way too long, but I had so much fun just punching monsters. Yes, a fast blunt weapon. Maybe not Tom. Again, other people have talked about it too, but a actual true fist weapon would be so good. Like, just expand on the Akuma moveset, you know? Just take that, de-Street Fighter it, and then give you a couple more combinations. And or heck, you can make it even more Street Fighter and give you actual, like, square, square, triangle does one thing, while triangle, triangle, square, well, I mean, we already have that to some extent, but give it, like, full-on hack and slash combo attacks or something. It would be awesome.
Monster Hunter Frontier G Genuine released
April
23rd, 2014 and came with arguably one of the biggest inclusions of the entire series, the Tonfa class. Tonfas were an extremely unique addition and came with multiple new features to help them stand out from the traditional weapons that had already been implemented. Functioning as an impact weapon, Tonfas had 2 modes, short and long, and these forms would reverse the hit
I also
stun
have
values.
those modes.
For example, if a monster was weak to blunt on its chest and head, you'd use the long form, but if you were in a predicament where you could only focus on the tail or legs, switching to short would allow you to be equally as effective. Tonfas really required you to understand monsters on a meta level. Consider that Miru's different forms would shift its hitbox values, meaning that you had to know exactly which form to use for whichever specific area you were focusing on and be ready to switch when Miru shifted. At the time, Tonfas were the only weapons that allowed the players to sprint while they were readied and could be considered one of the most overlooked contributions to the series, as
Really? That's actually pretty cool.
it would allow you to keep up with rampaging monsters. Players could attack areas on a monster and build up Dragon Spirit on them, ranging from a green aura to orange and finally red. The energy could then be released into a damaging explosion that would also apply a buff depending on the area of the monster that was affected.
Okay, so they Tomtas of the draft for Insect Glaive. I mean, it went from blunt to severing, but it feels like Tomtas are kind of Insect Glaive draft. But also, they just seem like they're fun.
Was the definitive and only aerial weapon, as using its vault mechanic actually offered iframes and hunters could evade in midair. Finally, the weapon also had a combo bar that when filled offered an attack buff multiplier, but the weapon only had access to the earth style on its release. Now, if you watched my previous video on all of the Linian creatures within the series, you'll remember that the flower field area is full of Aruki, a friendly Linian species that will often aid the hunter in battle. Flower Field was a wide open and beautiful area that the player would hunt various monsters in, including the new Fo-Rao Karuru. The Flower Field's apex Fo-Rao...
My cousin's been telling me about this one, and I've looked into them a little bit. From what little I've seen of them, I don't know if this video will change it, but they're another one I think could come back to mainline very well.
Karuru was modeled after a hummingbird. By absorbing the nectar of the plants around the area, Fo-Rao Karuru gained the different elements and ailments. It could take on sleep, poison, paralysis, defense down, fire, and an
You could do defense down?
Interesting new ailment called dark, whereby the hunter's screen would be obscured by black blots, making it difficult to see. It also had a new hardcore class where it could utilize...
See, that as an ailment makes a lot more sense than somehow shoving dragon energy and ice together to create darkness. But having it be like a vision clouding toxin, that makes perfect sense to me.
The nectar or honey as a projectile. Diorex was another burst species introduced as a relative of Tigrex. It revolved around charging up certain body parts to attack. For instance, it would charge up with an effect around its legs and do a massive jumping combo. The secret to this fight was that it was incredibly weak to impact damage, as the devs had devised it to be the perfect punching bag for Tonfas. On top of this, it featured negative element hit zones. Your overall damage was punished for using any element that wasn't dragon or ice. When
Interesting.
Rex didn't have any parts broken. Using fire and thunder had a flat -20 on all hit zones, and water had -10, so your damage would be compromised if you chose any of these elements.
I mean, you should always be using the right element for the right monster, or just going pure raw, or blast, exceptions, but actively punishing you for using the wrong element is kind of cruel, but also interesting.
Seems similar to how players are now punished for not being properly elementally prepared to fight Alatreon in World.
Oh, don't even get me started on Eschaton Judgment. I still haven't got past Alatreon. I know the strategy to solo Alatreon, but I still haven't quite managed to get through it. I haven't smashed my head against that brick wall in a while, but I hate Eschaton Judgment so much. It and Safajiva's shenanigans feel custom made to punish the people who can't or aren't set up to play online. I've gotten close to getting Alatreon in recent playthroughs, but I haven't quite managed to bash my head against him enough. I know the strat now I know the insect glaive setup to do him with the glaive, which is my main in world. I'm working on it, but it is so frustrating dealing with Eschaton.
Additionally, hardcore monsters include hardcore Akira Jebbia, who now has the ability to shoot crystals into the air before shooting at them so that they come crashing down and covering a wide area. It can also scatter crystals behind itself with its tail. And hardcore Silver Rathalos, who is now covered in larger spikes all around its
I like the reddish yellow spikes on Silver Wrath. That actually looks
body.
nice.
It can now rapidly fire its fireballs and can charge up a slow explosive fireball as well. On top of the new weapons and monsters, G Genuine also brought along the high-grade graphical update, updating the majority of textures and visual effects in the game to be more up to standard with previous mainline releases and the general trend of graphics at this point in time. It also brought with it the Hunter Navi, which was the set of tasks and chores players could complete to become better acquainted with all of the functions and systems in the game, and offered these tasks from the start of HR1 all the way
The tutorial quests
to the end of G, making it incredibly helpful. One final notable mechanic was the introduction of a limited use skill that could one-shot some monsters. This skill had a limited use and could only really be performed something like once every 3 days. Hunters could
Why?
charge their knife and then send it crashing into the ground, creating an earthquake effect. The damage was based on how many weapons the player had maxed the style rank on. We're now going to move on.
Okay. Well, I don't doubt hunters are strong enough to crater the ground with the stat up if they were really trying like that. I mean, see, fishing up, like I once calced fishing up Plesioth to be in the upwards of potentially over 100 to 200 tons of tons, just comparing it to a blue whale, because Plesioth is about the size, a little bit bigger than a blue whale. But so a hunter could crush the ground like that, but why would you even want a one-shot move to begin with? Because isn't the whole point to hunt the monster? Not use MacGuffin one time you kill them stick?
To the final section of this video, G5, where we'll take a look
I
at
do
all
not
of the
like
new
that at
monster
all.
inclusions as well as the partner
I do like
system.
that greatsword though. Looks cool. Or actually, no, that's a switch axe. That's a cool looking switch axe.
G5 released July 23rd, 2014. The major inclusion in this update was the introduction of the partner system. Similar to hunting partners or palicos from mainline games, players could finally bring felines along with them on hunts.
Wait. You couldn't bring felines with you until now? I thought you had them from the start. What? That's like... I am speechlessly flabbergasted. What do you mean it took until G rank, like midway through the G rank updates, to get feline companions? That's like start of the game thing. What? At most, that's a little bit through the village quest if we're talking like Freedom Unite. What? Why would you wait until basically end game, or at least what would be end game for another Monster Hunter? I know there's a whole Z rank thing. Why would you wait until now to give us felines? It's like the iconic hunting duo of Hunter and Palico. What?
Freedom Unite, players could have up to 4 cats and set them up with individual classes like bomber cats who would use explosives. Partners had the chance to...
I do partly miss how some of the old Palico systems worked. I like a lot of new Palico, but being able to select your Palico skills and stuff, how it worked in Freedom Unite, I do like that.
Obtaining hardcore or rare materials for you, and could obtain rare gathering materials as well. In terms of helpful NPCs,
Like Trish's
Frontier
boat?
really was king, providing you with so many options of assistance to bring with you on missions, and the level of customizability for each is something we still haven't really seen in mainline games. Moving on to monsters, we have multiple new
Oh, that's the bamboo one I've heard of.
hardcore species, a new burst species, Elder Dragon, and a new original Elder Dragon. First up, we have Inagame, who is a sleep-wielding elder present in the Bamboo Forest map, another new arena area introduced in G5. Inagame was unique for
I've
two
heard of
reasons,
this one.
one being its self-restorative abilities, and the second being the use of the map. Inagami here would use massive bamboo poles to extend its melee range, and sprout shoots from the ground to further extend it. Inagami also had additional mechanics whereby damaging each limb would script a stagger. If you damage the two front...
Okay, they retract. If the bamboo didn't retract and it then had like a spin attack that shattered the bamboo that it forced to rapidly grow, that would be a lot way cooler and feel more Monster Hunter-y to me. The fact that the bamboo just down into the ground, but I do really like an Elder Dragon that manipulates and interacts with plant life like this. Not like full-on shaping and controlling, like vine whipping, poison ivying you, but I haven't even gotten this far in One Piece, but Usopp's pop greens, stuff like that, that is cool. And that also kind of makes sense for Monster Hunter, because we do know like plants can be as crazy as monsters in Monster Hunter. It's just not as focused on. That's kind of cool. But the fact that they just into the ground kind of takes me out of it. So I'm a little torn on it. But I'm leaning on the it's really cool side.
And back legs, the tail, and the head, Inagami would be scripted into coating itself with a healing substance. And once all of the above limbs were coated, it would perform a sleep AoE, whereby afterwards it could topple itself. If you iframe this, it would present a massive opportunity. Next up...
That is a cool mechanic, though. And the fact that it can heal itself, too, makes sense, because it's using healing plants. Yeah, limit of the time does make sense, but yeah. Still, ultimately, I do think it is a really cool monster, and I could very much imagine that in the Scarlet Forest, actually. Also, I think my tracking wigging out? No, okay, I think we're good. But I think they would be a cool addition. Especially now that you pointed out, yeah.
Is Garuba Deora, a burst species of Kushala. Garuba was yet another new monster that used the awful crystal blight from Akura, but that wasn't all. Garuba had an area-wide one-shot that ignored guts or any...
Okay, now I know why you're calling it area... I already talked about this with Eschaton. I hate area wipers.
Defensive, and would start the fight with this. The only way to avoid this was to get close to Garuba and stand inside a protective sphere that the monster would generate. This was a
okay. It's not as bad as I thought, actually.
Real problem, since Garuba would do a swipe at the start and potentially knock away hunters.
Never mind.
Additional hardcore monsters included Hardcore Espinus rare species, who, I mean, just look at him. He's crazy looking. It's a darker variant of the typical white Espinus, and the spines are even larger than before. On top of that, it seems to glow a purple hue around its wings and head area. It can breathe a poison mist. Not just glow a purple, it shifts color a little bit too. But again, I really like the color scheme of the Espinus rare species, so... Oh God, now I'm saying Espinus. Why'd you make me do that? Espinos. Now and can form toxic puddles and tornadoes. And finally, hardcore purple Gypsaros, who is much faster and more aggressive. It can fly in the air and immediately slam down and then immediately flash afterward to really catch hunters off guard. It can also...
Honestly, I do hope we get purple Gypsaros in Wild's Master Rank.
Shoot out a trio of poison balls in a triangular formation. Visually, the talons and claws...
I love to make fun of him, but I love him.
...are longer, as well as the teeth.
But also, going back to the limits of the time, they make them... They could have just as easily had him do an immediate follow-up spin around and just had them, like, blast and fade. Still, I do think Plant Elder Dragon would be a cool addition.
Here we are at the end again, and I want to thank all of you for making it here. The G series of Frontier is bursting at the seams with content, and I wasn't able to realistically cover everything within this video. However, I believe I covered the major key points and factors in order to give you a good idea of what these entries in the Frontier series were like.
Yeah, so far, yeah. And I've been very heavily surprised by how much of Frontier I've actually wanted to see come over to mainline. I thought I was going to be super grumpy about everything, and to be fair, there have been a lot of things with Frontier I have objected to, but there's a lot of it that I think is actually really cool and would like to see return.
Next part in this history series will cover the remaining 5G updates. I'd like to give a big shout out and thanks to Sarah Symmetry and Ascalon for helping out with the script and research. Additionally, thanks to Fist from Fist.moe and all the community members for helping clarify certain aspects of the game. And thanks to Kapu and Eric for providing the in-game footage when possible. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Again, it only takes a couple of seconds and helps support me in my goal of creating this content for you all. If you didn't like the video, let me know anyway and I'll see what I can improve. Thanks so much for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.
And I will immediately take us to said next video. So, again, I have been really enjoying this. And considering that this is the plug time, I mean, you could also like this video and leave a comment once it stops being a stream if you want to help me out. That said, again, this playlist is already actively linked in the description of this stream. So after this, go check him out. Go check SuperRAD out. Give him a like, all that. And let's get on to the second half of Frontier G. Monoblos! Ah, White Monoblos. I miss you. I wish Capcom had not forgotten thee.
Everyone, and welcome back to another episode on the history of the Monster Hunter Frontier series. If you didn't know already, we only have 5 more G updates before moving on to the final updates for Frontiers.
Okay. Whatever this guy is, while he is very much in the edgy side of things, I really like his look.
Z and Z Zenith. It's been a long road, but we're almost there. We almost have everything you need to know about Frontier, and we're going to continue on with the craziness of G and a large majority of everything introduced from features to monsters. By this point in the series, Frontier was available on PC, PS3,
Whoa,
Wii
what
U,
the?
and
Zenogre? Why does Zenogre have lightning speed slams? What?
the Vita, meaning players had multiple options for how to access
What was
the
that?
content. I don't know if
What was that?
you can tell, but playing on the Vita sounds absolutely horrendous to me.
Just from what's in the background, yeah, playing that on the Vita would suck, but also, what is with that Zenogre?
Can you believe that there were some players that completed
And what is with this Devil Joe?
high-level Frontier content on that tiny handheld?
What? This Devil Joe has... Why does it have hedgehogs? What is this? What?
If you haven't watched my previous videos on the history of the series, I suggest you do so now. Additionally, if you enjoy these videos and want to help support the channel, please consider liking the video and
Already
subscribing.
did,
It
and
just
I
takes a
will at the
couple
end of this
seconds
series.
and really helps boost the reach of the video to Monster Hunter fans everywhere. I'm SuperRAD, and today I'm here to bring you a brief history of Monster Hunter Frontier G.
Let's go. Oh, we're starting off with this guy. What's your deal? I must know.
Monster Hunter Frontier G was released November 18th, 2014, with a 6.1 update on February 15th, 2015. To make a small correction on the previous video, I want to point out that I stated the high grade edition was released with G Genuine. However, this seems to be incorrect.
Oh?
Rather, G6 fully implemented high grade, while there was a G6 experience event during G5 that allowed players to test it out beforehand. This is a little confusing for me, so if there's an error here, I apologize. Anyway, the biggest feature of G6 outside of the new monster editions had to be the Sky Corridor, which is a huge tower created by the ancient civilization. To preface this, I'm going to be mentioning a couple key features and designs that might seem like they have an implication of Monster Hunter's lore in regards to the ancient civilization. If you've seen my video on
I love ancient civ lore and spec theory crafting, so if you've got a video on this, we're checking it out later.
Equal Dragon Weapon, you know we
Okay, apparently they got a vid on Equal Drag. Also, since Equal Dragon was brought up, once more, I'm going to say I called that. Before Wilds came out, I long shot crack theory called Equal Dragon Weapon, and I was right, because that is exactly what Zoshia is, and I am still writing that vindication. Let's get back into it.
Monster Hunter's lore in regards to the ancient civilization. If you've seen my video on Equal Dragon Weapon, you know we do not have a lot of valid information on Monster Hunter lore when it comes to things outside of the games themselves. And I want to make it clear that you shouldn't take some of the frontier features and designs and try to explain them in canon. None of this matters in canon, and none of this is going to fill your lore books or explain concepts like Equal Dragon Weapon because they currently don't exist. The Sky Corridor was a playable treasure.
So, also I'm going to have to back up because it sounds like this is a treasure quest, which was something I loved in Freedom Unite, but while Frontier is essentially non-canon, though a few things from it have been brought over, while it isn't canon, it can tell us what they were thinking about and what their ideas of what the ancient Civ stuff could be, at least back then, which we can then use to infer things and mix with what we know now from Wilds. So I'm super curious as to what we get from this.
This matters in canon, and none of this is going to fill your lore books or explain concepts like Equal Dragon Weapon because they currently don't exist. The Sky Corridor was a playable treasure hunt scenario where players would ascend through levels of this giant tower that was full of traps and secret rooms to be rewarded with custom weapons and armor. Apparently the names of these weapons were things like Virus, Demon Path, Enemy Within, and so on, and if you're scratching your head asking why the names sound so edgy, it's apparently due to the fact that they were the names of various metal bands. These power weapons were fully customizable, and players could allocate stats to raise attack, elemental damage, select a status ailment.
That is really cool, actually.
Level of sharpness. Think of it as a Build-A-Bear workshop, but to kill things instead of cuddle them. The developers even offered a website with a template to allocate stats within, so players could plan out their build before committing to it.
That is really cool.
The Taiwan website is actually still up, although missing some content because Taiwan never got access to the Zenith updates. I'll link it in the description if you want to take a look. During development, the Sky Corridor was meant to implement an ancient civilization NPC, or at least her ghost, but this seems to have been scrapped early on.
Okay, good. Good, because I know Monster Hunter is has fantasy elements. Don't get me wrong, there's bioenergy, mind links with Y variants, some Elder Dragon, all of that, but ghosts, even on Frontier, with its shenanigans, ghosts are a step too far for me. But also, this place looks like a crazy combination of Sen's Fortress and the Tim and the Gru, and that looks really cool to me.
Regardless, there's some cool concepts to take note of here that relate to the concepts revolving towers and the ancient civilization, such as monsters acting as watchdogs on specific floors of the sky.
Yes! Not just the build crafting tool, because firstly, a actual public build crafting tool would be awesome, just letting you plan around different set bonuses and stuff, but also the customizable weapon itself, that is something that I think is really cool of its own, and that would be cool to see come back too. Maybe it's like, maybe that's probably not, but imagine that that's the upgrade to the Gogmardian system in Wilds, where past a certain point, or as the new next version of that, you get to manually design your weapon with Gemma and the legend. That would be really cool.
Corridor, or the tower basically being compared to a warehouse, which is something we've heard in concepts for the Equal Dragon Weapon. At the end of the run, players had the option.
Also, tell me that this area is not the Cerberus boss fight arena from Devil May Cry 3. Tell me that that's not what that looks like. Which also is Capcom too, so it's even more of an apt comparison because they were probably just referencing their own work, if I'm being honest.
Either escape the tower or fight Dure Mudir,
I completely
who we will get into.
I completely forgot for a half second that Devil May Cry is also Capcom, so
shortly. But one final thing to note, the corridor and resulting Durey Madeira fight were on a time limit. Rather than having a finite number of carts, players would simply receive a time penalty for each time they faint, eventually resulting in them running out of time entirely. So,
that a time limit instead of cart quest, that is actually, I like that a lot, especially for a treasure hunt style quest. That is something I also want to see come back, because that is fun.
Durey Madeira, this obsidian-colored elder dragon, inhabited the higher levels of the sky corridor. It starts out with huge stomps, powerful ice attacks, and wide-reaching tackles.
I like his design.
After taking damage. With this, it added the new Corrupted Poison ailment, a powerful and quick-acting poison that also afflicted defense down. The poison couldn't be cured by antidotes, and players had to use a built-in perk system with Sky Corridor to give themselves a buff to deal with it.
Depending on how annoying that was, it's a little iffy, but a turbo version of poison for an elder dragon that does defense down too is cool.
Durey was relentless, having an infamous combo where it would gallop across the map multiple times in quick succession, homing in on hunters. If you got caught, Durey would instantly combo you into a pounce attack and could very easily one-shot you. It has two phases, where in the second phase it will cover its claws in ice. Sarah Symmetry pointed out that Frontier showed an example of how monsters could cancel certain animations for combos. There are a lot of attacks where if you don't get hit by the first part, the second part simply won't happen. Think of it like Velkhana's ice floor attack. If you get frozen, she'll stab you. If you don't, she does nothing. Durey's quest options are also incredibly interesting. You can cart as many times as you like, at which point you will fall to the ground as if you were stunned. You can lie here for 1 minute, after which you'll respawn, or alternatively press A to spawn automatically. Whilst you are lying prone, other players can throw the revival ball item onto you to nullify the feint. These feints could cost 1 minute long penalties on the timer, and the fight only lasted 20 minutes, so it was rarely an option to take the cart. That wasn't all, however. There existed a second version of Durey known as Second District that could keel over odd way of phrasing it, but it's probably a translation thing. And die like the base species. However, you wouldn't be treated to any carves, and the screen would slowly begin to fog and freeze over. At this point, the monster entered phase 3 and changed dramatically in power. Poison icicles littered the battlefield, and each slam could produce huge waves of heat. You had the same time limit, more health, and more power to deal with. It's no understatement that Durey Madeira was a massive wall to overcome.
However, yeah, I mean, he sounds like a massive wall, but he sounds like a relatively fair massive wall and a fun one.
Doing so would provide amazing sigil rewards for hunters to utilize. Next up, we got Pobao Rubarumu.
Oh, the hunting horn whale flying wyvern.
Giant whale-like monster residing in the highlands. Pobao was a hunting horn on legs. It had the ability to buff itself considerably with attack buffs, health buffs, and even defense buffs. At the start of every fight, Pobao would sing a song that causes all of these buffs to activate. In terms of fighting, it moved very similar to a Cantor, using its huge frame and limbs to crush hunters, as well as being able to send out waves of sounds at hunters. If you were hit by this attack, a new ailment known as Confusion would be applied, but this is not to be confused with the reverse controls of mainline introduced in Cross. This status would randomly cause the player to dance. That's right, the
The hunting horn whale cast the irresistible dance. Oh, it is hilarious. It's a ridiculous status ailment, but it is hilarious. And I'm honestly fully on board with this guy coming back to mainline.
Dance gestures would randomly play, interrupting your combos and leaving you as a sitting duck. Pobao also
his beats are too strong,
element, which was a combination of water and ice. This monster has a hardcore mode introduced as well, but the differences are very subtle. G6.1
I'm sorry, I can't. The whale cast irresistible dance. That is just something about that is indescribably perfect. I don't know. That's great. And here's where we fusion summon Diablos with a stove.
Introduced a new burst species in the form of Varusaboros, who took the form of a demonic Diablos coated in fire. It would attack.
Yeah, this This is a Devil May Cry crossover event, not a monster. You know what I mean?
By covering the arena in flames when enraged, darting behind hunters to skewer them with its horns, and bursting fire pillars from the ground. Interestingly, as this species evolved from Diablos moving to the desert to get their fix on a particular type of cactus, this actually factored into the fight as well.
Now, a fire or volcano version of Diablos is cool, but this design isn't it.
Single cactus ball could be carried around like a wyvern egg spawned whenever Verussa was out of rage, and hunters could roll this across the.
Though I do really like his fire changing color and going white, blue, hot when he's enraged. That is fun. But this feels like a Final Fantasy, like, maybe, well, Final Fantasy is a great comparison, but this feels like a Devil May Cry or Final Fantasy or some other magic hack and slash game more than Monster Hunter. For that, it's really cool, but this feels like a crossover event at best in terms of fitting into Monster Hunter.
Battlefield to prevent the monster from catching it. This would.
That said, it is really cool looking.
Lock Verussa into its weaker state and would provide an easy
But also that attack's ridiculous. What?
And would provide an easy distraction for the other members of the party. Be warned though, if the Flamehorn Wyvern snatched up the cactus, the fire on its body would turn purple and it would stop at nothing to take you down. Other new hardcore monsters include.
Oh, that's not enraged. That's if it gets the special thing. Okay.
Included hardcore Kuaru Sapusu, who had an overall darker body with yellow accents littered around. It has a new combo mechanic where it can perform a rolling attack before cartwheeling and scattering crystals. It will.
I said before, but this guy is designed, like, I like individual parts of it, but put together it doesn't. I could see him in Monster Hunter with his design, but it wouldn't be one of my liked monsters because of it. Something about the head specifically. The rest of the body of this guy I like. It's just something about his head that throws it all off for me.
And explode all of the crystals at once with a roar. And hardcore Lunastra, who looks even more ferocious. She has similar upgrades to hardcore Teostra, such as a larger flamethrower. This upgrade is faster, stronger, and comes with new moves, such as a somersault into dust explosion combo, where it will perform a jumping somersault and blow up the area directly below. And that's fine.
I mean, the Queen of Flame is always incredibly powerful, so, well, relative to her ranking in. She's up there in terms of, she's like the highest end of mid-tier Elder Dragons in terms of strength. So, of course, she's strong.
G6. We can now move on to G7 and see the new additions such as monsters, styles for Tonfa, and the biggest inclusion, Transcendence.
Transcendence, huh? Oh, this is the Liquid Mercury one.
So G7 gets released April 15th, 2015, and with it a new feature known as Transcendence or Transcendental Secret, which was an ability that would be unlocked by hunters at HR3. Think of it like Y-Stones from 4 Ultimate, in that it was an item that would be consumed to put your hunter into a powered up state. The big difference, however, was that the Transcendental state would take time throughout the quest to power up. Transcendence could offer many buffs to be customized and upgraded by the hunter through the completion of cycling event quests that offer points. These points are then used to unlock and upgrade various buffs for the player. Players that entered the quest with Transcendence would see an icon in their item bar that would slowly change in color from silver to gold. Once gold, it would begin to flash, and players that activated it would enter an advanced form where their buffs are applied, and they may even have new on-hit animations depending on their element. Upon landing enough attacks, the players could then use a super move known as Elemental Burst, where they charge at the enemy with their hunting knife and unleash a large elemental attack. These still adhered to the rules of monster elemental weaknesses, resistances, or immunity, meaning if the monster was immune to the element, the burst would instead be raw damage, and if it was a multi-element weapon, it would try to use the element that was most effective against the monster, or randomize the element if none of them were particularly effective. On to monsters,
That is a really interesting mechanic, and while it would have to be retooled a lot, I could almost see this being brought over into mainline Monster Hunter in a way, because I am of the opinion that, and this is let me tangent here and go into what is almost entirely headcanon here. My thought process on what separates your normal hunters who can maybe challenge a Rathalos and player character A-lister ace hunters is their ability to channel and manipulate their own bioenergy and, depending on the weapon, that of the monsters. That is why our player hunters can use like hammers and charge up and charge their strength into the hammer or their greatsword, or fuel their spirit into their demon dance of the longsword, or not demon dance of the longsword, demon dance of the dual blades, or the spirit gauge of the longsword, or take in the pilfered strength of a monster through their bond with their kinsect. And I know I was just complaining about fantasy and shenanigans, but that's my read on how all the glowy aura stuff works. It is that the elite hunters are capable of directly channeling and utilizing bioenergy to do that. Same thing as like Dragon Ball Ki or something. And so, retooling and contextualizing that transcendence mode as, say, a special talisman or something that can store and concentrate and temporarily enhance a massive burst of bioenergy to supercharge a hunter, I could see them implementing that in a way that actually makes sense within mainline Monster Hunter and would be really cool. Probably never going to happen, but that is a fun mechanic.
Merugu was announced. Dominating the Interceptor's base and polar regions alike, it was an elder dragon similar in stance to Kushala or Ruko Diora, and had the ability to control metal. A liquid metal substance coated this monster, functioning as armor and wings, and yes, a weapon. Puddles of metal would rain from the sky, and they could be sharpened into points and even thrown out like boomerangs.
I do think that this is a really cool monster idea, especially since we've already established magnetism. And I really like almost all of his design, except for the wings.
Haruto could also throw every last bit of metal at hunters.
If these wings were connected by a membrane, I would like them a lot more.
Leaving it exposed to large damage if hunters could capitalize on it. Its most feared attack was the ability to encase itself in a sphere of what looks like mercury and run rings around a hunter before slamming down. Connecting with any part of this attack was a one-shot, and it was an absolute nightmare to evade. This monster came with a hardcore counterpart right away, but the differences were extremely minimal. One big change was the fact that it seemed easier to kill, but had higher part break thresholds.
So the hardcore has less overall health, but higher part. Alright.
Moving on is a new subclassification of monsters introduced into the MMO known as Origin Species.
Which, thanks to Archivale being an extinct species, depending on how crazy these might get a comeback. And I do kind of like the design of aquatic Basarios.
Monsters are existing monsters that inherit more from their ancestors, vastly changing both the visual look of their design as well as the abilities they had available to them. Origin monsters only lasted until G10, but brought with it 4 new total inclusions. The first of which was Gorea Dumas, a relative of Gravios that utilizes the water element to fire beams, and to propel itself at hunters. For something
I do. And this design makes sense, and you can almost like trace the evolutionary path from this guy into Basarios Gravios. They lived in a more aquatic but deserty, like an aquatic desert oasis type area, and they had their bodily channels to control and direct water. But as they migrated or forced through whatever pressures into more volcanic regions, they didn't have the water to drain and draw upon to fuel their stuff, so they had to adapt to the heat and fire of the volcanic regions, adapting and internalizing that along with the noxious toxic chemicals of the locales, slowly transitioning them into having sleep and poison. This tracks, and I really like it.
So huge and ungainly, it had a surprising amount of speed. The biggest visual differences is the orange shading around the body while being covered in large grassy green patches of moss and other flora. Other hardcore monsters included hardcore Gendrome and hardcore green Plesioth, that son
What them hips do.
of a bitch. Gendrome came with a few new additional techniques, including jumping while causing vibrations on the ground or
Again, why are we giving the drones a ground quake? They're too small to have a ground quake.
placing paralysis mines, a new paralysis bullet attack where it follows a head bash by shooting paralysis projectiles, and finally paralysis breath. Green Plesioth can now use a sleep attack, dash attack, and multiple crawling motions around you.
Okay.
Its scales are a bit brighter now.
None of that's
one
too
final note is that the
nonsensical.
Tonfa now also had access to the Heaven and Storm styles, allowing it to catch up in features compared to previously introduced weapons within the series. Alright, it looks like we can move on to G8, where we'll be focusing on new monsters and the return of old monsters through the new exotic species system. Let's take a look now. July 22nd, 2015 marked
Oh, I like this desert map. I've got no idea what's going on, but I like this desert map. It looks like Huecamundo or something.
the release of G8, and with it a new flagship monster known as Gezura Bezura, another new member of the Brute Wyvern class. It had the ability to tunnel in and out of the sand and use powered blasts of poison. It could even target hunters.
I would not have expected him to be a poison monster just looking at him.
With poison blobs after stunning them with the spin attack. The real party didn't start, however, until it hit rage mode, at which point it would glow a vivid purple and enlarge its already sizable palms into crushing machines. From here, it would abandon the poison status in favor of throwing everything but the kitchen sink at its foes. Huge boulders, sand waves, even exiting rage mode by raising a massive pillar and somersaulting off of it.
What? What do you mean? Okay, I hope he shows that because that sounds cool, but also what?
Funnily enough, in its apology, it was mentioned that Gezura was hiding in the sands from something, although hunters weren't quite sure what.
Well, that's interesting. And also, foreshadowing is a literary device.
Gezura also had a hardcore variation on release, but the changes were again very minimal. On top of
Sounds like the standard for on-release hardcores at this point.
this, it was mostly found in the new hunting location known as White Lake, which was a giant desert full of white sand that changed slightly based on if it was night or day. Yamakurai was also introduced.
Yamakurai, huh? Variant of Yamatuzukami, who I am really hoping becomes the secret siege elder dragon of the Scarlet Forest, because I think that would be really cool, and I want my floating gas bag back. I mean, I think he is in Stories 3, but I haven't played Stories 3 or 1 or 2. But I really like Yamatuzukami, and having him come back would be cool.
A massive origin species of Yamasukami that inhabited the highlands. Rather than the slow trawl through a tower, you fought this guy man to man, with the core gameplay revolving around the thunderbugs. Kurai would throw these out at key points during the fight, and if damaged, they would fly back and impact the monster itself. Do enough of these and you would force the beast to earth. In terms of
This is like literally what I was talking about in one speculation video for Yamatuzukami. I guess, I do not think I've seen anything on this fight, so same brainwaves, Capcom. But again, having this, maybe this origin species version, or just Yamatuzukami Tsukami that takes from this would be really cool.
abilities,
Especially now that we have the cephalopod skeleton.
it would use its massive size to charge, crush, and just batter around hunters, as well as having the peculiar ability of throwing seeds out onto the field to immediately sprout trees and wildlife, causing
I don't know about the wildlife part, but sprouting trees makes sense because it's the floating forest island.
damage. Now, the exotic classification was introduced in this update and was reserved
What?
for any mainline imports that originated in the main series from 3rd generation onwards. These were considered to be some of the most powerful and difficult content at their inception,
What?
with the introductory member being Zinogre.
Why? Why would you do it that way? If it would be one thing if you just brought the new main lines over and then gave super crazy frontier subspecies, because frontier has the super crazy versions, or just tone them up. Why call them exotics and make them super crazy?
There weren't incredibly drastic differences from your typical Zinogre. Naturally, it was faster, had more range on slams, and could dispel more Fulgur bugs than usual. It also gained a handstand tail slam and the odd ability of detonating Fulgur bugs from a distance. Zinogre did, however, have a scripted move based on how much damage you have dealt. It would scatter the bugs in a large area around it before roaring and summoning a huge pillar of thunder around it. The attack would completely one-shot through anything. You'd be left.
It one-shotting through anything is kind of shenanigans, but so far it's not that crazy for a frontier tune-up as an ogre.
It up and fall down unconscious. While you could iframe through it, the safest option was to just get out of its way. Devil Joe was also introduced alongside Zinogre and got itself some new toys to play with. It could chain a spinning tail into a pin and had a huge finisher attack where it would scoop up a massive amount of stone to bring it crashing back down. It was bigger, badder, faster, and physically dominating as expected of the frontier treatment.
And makes perfect sense for the pickle. Also, Bracky!
Not least, Brachydios and the Blast status were introduced in the following 8.1 update, and it too had some additions to its moveset. It could scrape its arms across the floor multiple times, leaving trails of quick exploding slime. It also had a flurry of punches attack similar to Raging Brachydios that sent out waves of explosions with every hit, and the absurd ability to pump massive amounts of slime into the ground for enormous AoEs.
Sounds like they mixed a bit of Raging Bracky into it. But so far, it just sounds like Frontier tuned up Bracky. And I really like Brachydios. Not as much as a certain pro of the series does, but I do like the monster quite a lot. Also, I think Brachydios would make a fantastic Guardian, but I had a short on that, so go check that out if you want to know my thoughts on that more.
The cool feature of exotics was that their armor pierces could provide a free skill that didn't affect your skill count. See, normally you could only have 12 skills activated at maximum, and any other skills would be grayed out. The free skill you could get through exotic equipment actually bypassed this. Each exotic weapon also came built in with speed eating, apparently all of them with no exceptions.
Little of a weird choice, but okay.
New hardcore monsters included hardcore Abiarugu and hardcore white Monoblos. Abiarugu has a longer, sharper tail as well as colored spikes around its body, and has a few new moves, such as
I think he actually looked better in his hardcore design.
Using its tail to slam into the ground before swiping it and slamming it again. White Monoblos now had a longer horn and spike.
That is quite the long horn on that Monoblos. But I just want to pause to look at Monoblos because I haven't seen him in too long.
And they were colored a deep orange and brown. It had a new rushing move that would be followed by a spinning attack and had the ability to lift up the ground around it. Now, if you thought we were reaching godhood before in the last video, then you haven't seen anything yet. No, what was included in G9 really allowed players to evolve the meta and carve a path into the future of Frontier.
So this is where things go fully off the rails then. All right.
Let's check it out.
A new Laviente.
G9 released November 18th, 2015, and with it, a third form of Raviente was introduced, known as Berserk Raviente for G-Rank. It was fought in the depths of Solitude Island, which we have previously visited with the first two snakes. Berserk demonstrated a mastery over fire, throwing up huge walls of lava, flooding the area with flames, and at later stages, a charged fireball held in its mouth that could wipe teams if it wasn't flinched. It also had the ability to cause geyser eruptions to launch the...
That sounds a little Eschaton Judgment-y, where if you don't do damage threshold, you die. And I don't particularly like those kind of supercharged checks. But massive Elder Dragon, and you've got a larger than normal party to deal with it, I think.
Hunters, at which point it would rise up, open its mouth, and
the chef set! Oh, I completely forgot about the chef set. This isn't nothing to do with Laviente, but I love that armor set. You know what, Capcom, if for some unfathomable reason someone from Capcom watches this, bring back the chef set and the chef dual blades and the chef hammer. I miss the chef sets so much. They were so fun.
swallow you whole. Yeah, that was a straight up one shot. Combat
Please give us the chef set as an event quest, Capcom.
involved the standard Raviente affair, breaking its body parts and causing staggers, with particular focus on a yellow paralysis crystal on its back that would cause a topple when broken. Players could reasonably expect months upon months of fights against this monster, as it further boosted the Ravi weapon lineage to absurd levels, eclipsing most other options. Skills like solid determination and evolution weapons blew the meta out of the
I'm sorry, evolution weapons?
water. The fight operated with one support team and 7 Slayer parties, equaling a total of 32 hunters. Within
Dang!
5 phases,
And I thought having the 8 hunters on the Zora Magnaros siege was crazy.
instead of the typical 9 from the previous
Not Zora Magnaros, Gogmazios.
centuries. Team compositions would usually consist of a gunner, slashing weapon, and 2 blunt weapons to properly topple the monster and make it climbable. Each phase was the same combat flow: attack, then climb, break the crystal, KO Ravi, break head, break body, and break tail. The support party's main goal was to bring specific weapons and stop Raviente from being able to use certain bullshit abilities that would prevent the slaying parties from damaging it. The skills and weapons provided from this event were absolutely insane and required a large amount of preparation and cooperation to succeed in. As much damage as possible was necessary, and when completed and grinded, players came out extremely powerful. Another new addition was
I mean, makes sense if its challenge is that crazy. But dang.
Torrid class, a bird wyvern that used solar energy.
What?
A bird wyvern and grinded, players came out extremely powerful. Another new addition was Torrid class, a bird wyvern that used solar energy to supercharge itself with thunder. There was a particular focus for this monster on discharging this energy as full blast, imbuing its wing spikes with electricity to throw it at hunters, and even beams that would flash when thrown, causing stun similar to Gypsyros. A nice touch that was added was that you could clearly see the bird's eyes close when KO'd, as they were fairly prominent on the beast's face. Again, this was another monster that had its hardcore introduced right away. Barioth was also
That's another one that I could honestly see coming back, at least just from that brief glimpse we were given of it. That seems pretty interesting. I'm gonna have to see if I can find a Frontier Biology Ecology series after this series, because I gotta know how much they actually explain.
introduced, and oh man, did it get a makeover. Massive icicle blasts, huge tornadoes that could split apart into multiple instances, and even the ability to spit 3 ice blasts in a row. Couple that with the snowman status, and you could very
That's a
easily
little
get
crazy.
your entire face pulled inside out before you knew it hit you. Update
Yeah, Barioth, Baroth, I can never keep it straight how you're supposed to say him, he's up, he's not top 10 of my favorite monsters probably, but he is up there, and I do really like to hunt him after I figured out the trick to break his wing arms. I have no idea where I was going with this. The thought died before I fully said it. Let's go back to this.
9.1 brought with it a new origin and exotic species, as well as one of the most influential additions to the series. First, we have the origin species of Teostra, Toa Teskatoru, who inhabited the Polar Sea and had command over the ice element. Not only was it able to summon a blizzard to freeze you in place if you stood still for too long, but it also had the ability to pull in waves of ice from the surrounding area, before blasting out AoEs from right under the hunter's feet. Fortunately, it shared the same squishy head that Teostra has been known for, but could still take you by surprise if you let your guard down. Uragan
Okay, I actually like his design, but I am very confused on how he goes from being Ice Elder Dragon to fire. I mean, we've had crazier switch ups with subspecies and such before, but this is supposed to be like prehistoric Teostra, right? It's an origin species. So with the previous origin species, they covered it already slipped my mind the name, but the Basarios Gravios origin, I could very easily see how it evolved from that into Gravios Basarios. Not so much with this Teostra.
was our fourth exotic to be introduced. It gained a couple new attacks, such as charging up a nova from the earth,
I like the big
exploding
chin
rocks in a circle before detonating them, and the garbage disposal attack. Uragan would roll in place, digging itself through the floor while rotating in a full circle. One side of the attack would spew out rocks with surprising coverage, and the other side would suck hunters in for a swift death. Now for another
I like
monster
the big chin. He's always
classification.
fun.
Peerless monsters, known as
Peerless.
NOOOO or extreme individuals, were the highest level of
Okay, this is the Devil Joes we saw in the thumbnail. What happened to the pickle?
challenge that a single hunt could present to Frontier players. The rewards were plentiful, a full box of supplies, utilities, and a unique item per monster to grant incredibly powerful decorations and armor. Every attack could be considered to be a one-shot. They hit fast, they trapped hunters, and required perfect adrenaline.
Every attack being a one-shot is crazy, but I do really like these Devil Joe designs.
Strategies to master and
It puts the devil in Devil Joe.
conquer. With each peerless monster, two versions of the quest existed. The Lesser Slay, or Repel, was a 20-minute affair where players could use the login boost feature to reduce damage and had a weaker variant of the target present. These typically gave less materials, but they were more accessible for lesser geared players. Then there was the True Slay. The True Slay was to be completed in 10 minutes and featured a Muso at the height of its power.
10 minutes already is crazy, especially if it's an even stronger version.
With health-based attacks scripted, no defensive options, and a truckload of health to contend with. To give you an idea, Howling Zinogre had 64,800 on its lesser quest, and this was increased to a gargantuan 540,000 on the True Slay. Soloing any of these monsters was a mark of patience, skill, attrition, and the ability to throw roughly the same amount of power as the sun at a monster.
Yee! That's a lot. But that's a lot in a way that almost wants me to make almost makes me want to bash my head at it, even though I don't have Frontier. But I don't know. The fact that pretty much everything will one-shot you is crazy. But it does like a pretty awesome hunt.
First to be introduced was Starving Devil Joe in G9.
Oh, this is Starving Devil. Okay.
Was similar to Savage Devil Joe
I've
in
heard
design,
of.
but with a golden and red hide. It can shoot 3 balls of dragon energy, and when enraged would perform a stomp attack that would create an explosion of dragon energy on impact. On top of the level of difficulty associated with a Muso, you actually had to fight 2 of these at the same time, as it was the only available quest during Muso week. Now, Howling Zinogre was next in 9.1. This albino Zinogre would glow and crackle with power as it progressed through the fight, and its thunder abilities were augmented to ridiculous levels. It could disappear with a dash and combo this into a multitude of attacks, such as charged slams, paralysis causing thunder, uppercuts, you name it. And the only way to tell what was coming next was paying attention to the minuscule head movements. It's
Sheesh. Okay. At the very least, the crazy Devil Joe we saw at the very start of this one, not Devil Joe, the crazy Zinogre we saw at the start of this wasn't just base Zinogre, but like a turbo rare species, but that is crazy.
still retained the damage check attack of its vanilla cousin and had the audacity to start the fight with it. Howling very quickly became notorious with the
You gotta
overwhelming
be.
visuals and long-reaching attacks almost epitomizing Frontier.
Yeah, we are into the Frontier shenanigans.
9.1 was Thirsty Paria Puria. Unfortunately, I don't have
Thirsty.
as much info as I'd like on this specific Muso, but it was very similar in design to its Supremacy variant. Other hardcore monsters include hardcore Lavasioth subspecies and hardcore Silver
Lavasioth.
Hypnocatrice. The Lavasioth subspecies was brighter in comparison to its normal counterpart and had a tuft of scales on the top of its head as well as a more developed tail.
He looks, I'll give him this much, he looks better than Lavasioth, especially since he's the hardcore extra stuff, but it's still Lavasioth. And Lavasioth is just extremely disappointing. Even more so than Juratotus. I am never happy to see Lavasioth. It's always just, lava fish. I don't like him. And it's not even, I don't like him, not like I hate him. I don't like him as he bores me. And even when they try and spice him up with Frontier shenanigans, it's, why are you polishing the Mudfist turd?
Create lava pools and slam into them to create a large explosion. The main changes for Silver Hypnocatrice was the inclusion of additional sleep.
Now,
effects,
Hypnocatrice I
such as
love,
time sleeping
even though I
gas
haven't
and the
hunted him
ability
in
to spread
years
its
and
breath
years.
sleep gas around. Okay, here we go, baby. G9's done. We got the new Snake Dragon Boy. We got the Muso. What else could possibly be thrown at us? Let's take a look at G10.
From your tone, I assume it's some shenanigans. Because we are firmly into Frontier shenanigans, so let's see how hard you're. What are you? Oh, you give off a very regal aura. I don't know how I feel. I don't know. We'll have to see what you do.
If you're like me and exhausted with all of the insane content presented in G9, then don't worry. G10 is a little more tame with its inclusions.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding.
Oh.
There's new monsters and even more moose.
I just said it was going to be crazier, and yet you somehow... How did you debate me? I knew this was Frontier, and I knew this was when Frontier was racketing up to Frontiering. Why did I genuinely think G10 was going to calm down?
To go over, as well as the conclusion of a mainline weapon brought over to Frontier. Released April 21st, 2016, G10 brought with it a new flagship known as Guanzurumu, the Emperor King Elder Dragon, an incredibly popular
I was right about it being regal.
force of a fight. Guan, true to its royal name, commanded a squad of lesser
He even has a throne. Are you kidding me?
wyverns known as Iguras to further boost its fire breath attacks, and these critters could even throw hunters off the edge of the map for an instant feint.
Okay, that's a little shenanigans, but at this point, instant feint moves are Frontier, just being Frontier. But again, like I said this earlier in this stream too, I really like it when monsters can command minions. That's fun.
It was fairly slow to start, methodical, and attacked powerfully, splitting the ground with slams and sending blasts of razor wind at enemies. It also had a hardcore mode released alongside it. In Phase 2, Guan turns a deep black, snaps up its royal guard, and explodes with the dragon element. In this phase, not only does it get huge novas and burning floors,
so it goes from Regal Monarch to Shadowy Overlord. I actually like Shadowy Overlord mode a lot more.
Of dragon elements, but the screams, tremor, and wind that it throws out far surpass any sort of protection that was available at the time. Your only choice was to...
It has screaming attack. You know what that reminds me of? Especially in its dragon mode with the screaming sonic cannon attacks. There was a novel series that I have a collection of, like the first 5 books in it as one big book, and it is on a bookshelf right beside me. I'm gonna step away from the mic for a second to grab it so I can remember the name. Yeah. Temeraire. It is I haven't read it in a long time, but it is a alternate Napoleonic war where there's dragons. And this reminds me heavily of the main guy's dragon in that book. Very niche cut, probably, but that's where my mind is going.
Dodge or block, as these ancillary effects caused you to be immobilized for a huge amount of time. Guan was fairly well liked for the overwhelming sense of power and royalty that it exuded, and it's not hard to see why. It was also fought within the new Cloud Viewing Fortress arena location. Two more exotic species hit the game in G10 and
Nargacuga.
10.1. These were Nargacuga and Stygian Zinogre. Nargacuga was fairly faithful to the second gen base, however it now had the ability to rain down tail spikes in a wide area, causing multiple hits and stun to any unfortunate enough to have missed their dodge. Additionally, it glowed bright blue in rage mode and left an after image when it strafed, as well.
I mean, honestly, that fits for Nargacuga. It's not all that crazy for a frontier shenanigan.
As being able to chain two dash jumps with one another, where it would go invisible and leave behind bursts of wind that would trap you in a chip damage loop. Furthermore, it could chain.
Okay, that's a little more frontier shenanigan in a way I don't like, though.
Tail slams and could attack you whilst turning with a huge sweeping wing arm attack. Stygian, on the other hand, introduced a new ailment entirely. Whilst it still had the usual dragon element and put its own spin on the damage check attack.
Well, why does Stygian go full Stygian was already the Shadow the Hedgehog of Zinogre. Why does he go extra spiky? I don't think he does that normally.
From its cousin, it could also cause items to be lost and weapon sharpness to fall if the player was hit too many times with dragon element. It would.
Okay, is it item lost or item steal? Minimal distinction there, but I do miss when monsters could do the item steal thing, so.
Also combo spin juggle attacks as we've seen with the Byarugu and send out tornadoes full of dragon element to catch you unaware.
At that point, that's just frontier being frontier.
Species, Vol'jang, a volcanic relative of the badass monkey man himself, Vol'jang. Vol'jang was covered in a flint-like rock that would ignite in rage mode and could send out waves of explosions with every punch. On top of it,
you know what? This one's actually. I was going to say Vol'jang doesn't make much sense, but actually, considering that Rajang are pretty varied in where they can be, and we often fight them in places like the Battleground in older gens, the volcanic region, I could actually see somewhat a fire blazing Rajang turning into modern Rajang. At least I can see that a lot more than Ice Teostra.
it would burst with fire after certain attacks and augmented its punch combo's range by literally lighting itself on fire. In 10.1, a new Muso was released known as Ruler Guanzarumu. Visually, it now has red horns and glowing webbing on its.
You really had to summon your minions to hide the view so you could appear in an Aurifar moment. All right. The Dragon Aurifarms.
Wings, which seem to look as if they have been torn apart. Some new moves it has at its disposal include when it flies into the air and creates 3 large golden dust explosions, and a conal roar that can cause a one-hit KO explosive dust fireball. As a final addition, Ruko Diora received a hardcore variant. It had better control over its magnetic breath and multiple new combo maneuvers, which it could do after a roar, such as following one with a body slam. And that's it for G10, and by process of elimination, all G updates. I feel like I'm missing something, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's probably nothing.
Well, give it
nothing. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, you debated me once, you're not going to debate me now, especially when I can see that there's a decent bit of the video left before outro. What madness? I feel like I'm going to need to take a pause and deep breath to deal with whatever madness we're about to see, because I feel like it is going to be some frontierism TM. Okay. Let's go.
It's nothing. G10 marked the introduction of the Switch Axe into Frontier, but this
Oh.
wasn't your typical mainline iteration. Instead, various changes were made to have it fit in with
It's
the
the
Frontier
Swax.
lifestyle. When originally announced, players were already worried that the dev team was relying too much on the mainline content due to the exotic species, and
What?
the idea of simply introducing a new mainline weapon didn't sit right with them.
People were complaining about bringing the new mainline monster. Why would you complain about bringing in the new main lines to the site? If anything, I think people would be wanting that.
However, when the trailer dropped, it seemed like all worries were washed away, and the weapon was rebranded as Switch Axe F to differentiate it from its lower tier mainline counterpart.
Oh, come on. Don't do my boy Switch Axe like that.
It introduced faster file reload times, faster switching between modes, advanced movement, and fast file regeneration, all within the base style. Earth style was brought back and focused on an upgraded vanilla mainline experience for the weapon. Heaven style was incredibly fast, and Storm style focused on Royal Guard. If the player guarded...
Did you just say Royal Guard? You're telling me Frontier that you go, Royal Guard. Please tell me it's Devil May Cry Royal Guard.
enough, they could unlock the blade form of their weapon, but not the typical blade form. Instead, they released a powerful blade beam to be used in combat, similar to the Monado in Xenoblade Chronicles.
Huh? So it's not a switch axe, it's an axe that charges up a laser sword mode. That's not a switch axe.
The inclusion of this weapon actually caused the dev team to rethink their focus on the evasive playstyle, since switch axes were so rewarding towards defensive players. On top of all of this, the weapon was available as soon as you hit G rank, unlike Tonfa, which required you to complete several story quests to unlock. Okay, now, that really is it for the G series of expansions.
Okay. I was worried we were gonna have, like, God Emperor Fatalis or something, but this is Switch Axe showing up and being wildly different. Not. Okay.
There's many reasons why a lot of Western and mainline fans have a bad impression of Frontier. From the eccentric designs to how difficult some of the monsters can be, it's no surprise that when you look at the series in 2016 and see these one-hit NOOOO killing machines, that you might be a little put
Wait, what did you just say? What did you just say to me?
Of Frontier. From the eccentric designs to how difficult some of the monsters can be, it's no surprise that when you look at the series in 2016 and see
oh, this is... I feel old, and I'm not old, but I feel old, because this is from 10 years ago. Oh, why does that hurt so much to hear that this is from 10 years ago? Oh. Oh, wow. I don't even know, man. Time. The unceasing march of entropy, it calls to us all. Wincing about my non-existent age. Let's continue.
These one-hit NOOOO killing machines that you might be a little put off by the...
I had to actually stop and check to make sure it was 2026 for a second. Oh, it does not feel like it is. It still feels like 2018.
Can be. It's no surprise that when you look at the series in 2016 and see these one-hit NOOOO killing machines that you might be a little put off by the idea of Frontier as a whole. But
yeah, but at the same time, there's a decent chunk of Frontier I've been objected to, but there is a surprisingly large part of Frontier that I have actually been really enjoying seeing. and very much would like to see get brought forward and readapted into mainline, because, like I said, there's a lot of this that is surprisingly cool and still feels Monster Hunter. Because I mean, all of it's cool. Let me rephrase. There hasn't been a single thing I've seen here that I don't think is cool for a video game. All of it's awesome. I mean, some of it's a little grindy, a little MMO-y, but that's from someone who's never played an MMO, so... But all of it's awesome, but only some of it feels like Monster Hunter. But I was expecting a lot less of this to feel like Monster Hunter than what has.
Simply looking at the design of the monsters or simply looking at just NOOOO is only a surface level examination of Frontier as a whole. There's so much content and so much depth. The fact that NOOOO required you to effectively change your entire playstyle doesn't say anything about Frontier as a whole. Rather, it was another option in a game full of possibilities. The next part of this history series...
And yeah, I did have a much more surface negative view on this than when I first started looking into this. And I do want to thank you guys for encouraging me to check out this playlist and check out Frontier as a whole, because, again, so much of this is so much more interesting and so much more Monster Hunter feeling than I thought it was going to be.
Will cover the final updates, Z and Zenith. I'd like to give a big shout out and thanks to Sarah Symmetry and Ascalon for helping me out with the script and research. Additionally, thanks to Fist from Fist.moe and all of the community members for helping clarify certain aspects of the game, and thanks to Kapu and Eric for providing the in-game footage when possible. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Again, it only takes a couple of seconds and helps support me in my goal of creating this content for you all. If you didn't like this video, let me know anyway, and I'll see what I can improve. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you in
been thoroughly
the
enjoying this
final Frontier video.
And I think we will say, well, yeah, it is the final Frontier video. The last one's the compilation of all of them. And I think we're going to save Frontier Z for another time. But this has been fun. And again, my outlook on Frontier over the course of these videos has changed dramatically. Like you said, there is a lot of it just outside looking in, not having anything more than surface level glimpses. Which, I mean, this is still relatively surface level, but you get what I mean. There's a lot more to Frontier than I thought there was, you know? I mean, there's a lot more that's Monster Hunter to Frontier. And I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to see it so far. But, like I said, I do think we are going to call it here for tonight. And perhaps next time we'll check out Frontier Z, the final chapter of this playlist, and then maybe check out some more videos from SuperRAD. Or maybe we'll go back to doing some more Elder Scrolls Arena. Maybe something else. Like with last stream, I will make a poll after I close the stream down, so you guys can vote on what you'd like to see next. But until then, it's been fun. But, goodbye and good night. And I'll see you next time.